I just get my vegetable patch here and getting the bed ready here. I'm going to be planting some onion sets here. I use this fertilizer, just raking it in. This is fish blood and bone, and I use that. It's a natural fertilizer. I rake that into the soil now. I'm going to be planting my onion sets. Welcome back, by the way, to Growing with Grandpa. Thanks for coming back. There's old Archie here. He likes to have a look what I'm doing in the veg patch. We've got that little fence there because there's things in the vegetable patch like potatoes and tomatoes and things like an onion. So of course he can't get up because it can be toxic to dogs and make them ill. So I put some fertilizer in there and I've raked it in, but it'll have to be watered soon after as well. These are overwintering onion sets. These ones are a Japanese onion set. I've been growing these for many years and I like these. They go in the ground now and then over the winter, they'll just put on a little bit of growth now, and then over the winter, they'll just stay, because they're hardy, they will stay in the ground there, and then in the spring, they'll really start growing fast. So I always grow from sets rather than seeds. You can grow from seed, but I like the sets because it's a lot quicker. And yeah, these are, we had lovely loads of onions again this year. They grow really big. I keep growing these Japanese overwintering onions because they always work well for me. Now we've got our soil here with some fertilizer in. It's been raked, get the stones out. Really, onions don't need a lot, as long as you just give them a little bit of feed, but then as long as you keep them weed free, just give them a little bit of water, lots of water. They like lots of water, but they don't like too many weeds to compete with. So what we does with those, I got my digger stick over here. Here we are. We're going to be planting some some spring cabbage in here in a moment as well. I've got the plants here. I'll show you how I'm going to put those in a minute. One thing you just have to watch, I don't usually touch wood, as they say, a bit of a superstition. I don't usually have a problem with, but you have to watch that the pigeons or the birds don't pick your onions out, pull your onion sets out. So I plant them in a bit. You leave the top just out a bit, but you've got to firm them in a bit, otherwise those old pigeons, they'll have them out, you see. But there we are. So there's not a great science to it. Just leave them out a bit. Now, I've done it like this for many years, and I've always done really well with the onion sets, these Japanese onion sets. So not too far into the ground. You can even just push them and just plant them there. Onions don't have a great deal. They're not that fussy about the soil. As long as you give them a little bit of fertilizer, as I say, keep them watered during the dry times and keep them weed free, and they'll go really well for you. Can you see those are just pointing out? It's easy to know which way to plant them because they got this little bit on the top. That's the top, and then the roots will go from there, you see. So we'll put them in there. And onion sets are usually quite easy to get hold of. I struggled this year. I'd buy them in the shop, Wilkinson's or Wilco's, but they didn't have any this year. But I bought these online. They look lovely sets. They look great. I've never bought from this company before, called Bolly Bulbs. So there we are. I bought them online this year, and we'll see how they do. I'm sure they're going to do really well for me, like these Japanese onions usually do. So we firm them so the pigeons or the other birds can't get them, but just leave the tops out of the soil. They've got to be left out, you see, and they get the light and they'll grow. But as I say, during the winter they'll just stay sort of, they're hardy, so they'll last through the winter, but they won't do a lot of growing in the winter. Well, you better come through here now, because I'm going to go put these cabbages in now. I'll put the rest of those onion sets in later. I usually put 50 in this little patch here. Now, these are spring cabbage, so you just put them in now. I sowed them in August, or it might have been the end of July, beginning of August, and these are they're a spring cabbage. Again, you put them in now, they'll put a little bit of growth on now, but they won't grow during the winter. But like most brassicas, that's the cabbage family, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, they will grow. They are hardy, and I'm going to go and see Archie, because he's got something he shouldn't be chewing. He's got one of my plant labels, hasn't he, you little rascal? Come on here, Archie, good boy. There's a good boy, give it back to me. There's a good boy, look, little rascal. He had one of my plant labels, you've got to watch him, you know. So yeah, they will stay, they are hardy. Through the winter they'll stay, and then they'll put lots of growth on, we hope, in the spring. Now, I've raked in some of that fish blood and bone fertilizer in here. But something else you have to do with brassicas, you must firm the soil. They like a firm soil, otherwise they'll blow. They won't make a nice strong heart, you see. Now, we've still got my cabbages growing here from the summer. We had lovely, lovely big heads. We had a few cabbages, well, a couple here that didn't do very much, but the others we've already picked. But these had lovely, lovely big heads that we've had loads of. But then after you pick the big heads, can you see where I cut the big broccoli head off there, the cabbages there? But then after that, they were like this sort of size, you see. But then after that, you get these little secondary heads, and we've been picking these for weeks. And we'll carry on. They'll probably still have some in the spring. They won't do a lot in the winter, but they are hardy, so they won't die off in the winter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this mesh back and put a bigger one on to cover those and my new spring cabbages. And the reason why we have to cover them is because of the cabbage white butterflies. I've mentioned this before. They will grow, they will lay their eggs on brassicas, and then the caterpillars will then hatch out those eggs and they'll eat all your plants. Archie, you tinker, he's chewing up the cucumber plant now in the greenhouse. But anyway, so we're going to put that in. It might seem, oh, it's winter time, but here in the mild part of this country in England, here in the southeast where we are, we do get lots and lots of cabbage white butterflies right through the autumn and even into the winter because it's so mild. So you've got to keep them protected. So we get the soil nice and firm, put a fertilizer in. If you've got a soil that's very high in acid or that's not high in alkaline, so it's an acid soil, one way of telling this, if in your area, have a look around, if people grow things like camellias and rhododendrons and azaleas, if they grow really well, then that means your soil is probably acid. So what you'll then need to do is to add a little bit of garden lime into the garden, or rake it into the soil a few weeks before you plant, because they do like what we call alkalinity. So a little bit of lime in the soil. I actually plant them all individually, and it's always worked okay for me. This is where my onions were last year, or this year, just finished. I harvested them in July this year. Next year, this is where my beans and my sweet corn will be, but I don't plant them until May, you see. So these are called April, that's the name of the variety, and so they should be ready in April, beginning of May. And so because I don't plant my sweet corn and my beans until late May, so they should be ready then, and we'll put a lot of manure in here to get it ready for the hungry plants like the beans and the sweet corn. But you have to do something for successful growing called rotation, crop rotation, so you don't plant the same kind of plants in the same area every year, because then the soil gets depleted of the nutrients that plant needs. So we will rotate them. So as you can see, I put that in, and I'm going to really firm that down, not compact it, but just firm it all the way along. It's got to be nice and firm, that soil. I'm going to put another one in here, but thanks for coming along, and do please subscribe to the channel. You can also go and see me on Facebook or Instagram. On Instagram it's @growing_with_. I put this post in well to hold the netting up. _ so @growing_with_ Grandpa, and you can put some pictures up of what you've grown on there if you want to. We'd love to see it. Thank you very much for coming along, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Now there we are, we're going to put all of those in. I think I got about 15 there. I'm going to put them all in, and then we'll cover them up with I've got a big piece of mesh there, which I'll cover the whole, these cabbages that are still there, and these spring cabbages. And again, the spring cabbages, just keep them free of weeds. And try and keep the slugs off if you can. Next year, aim for slugs. I'm going to use something called nematodes I haven't used for many years. That's a natural way of keeping slugs off, rather than using these horrible slug pellets and things which you couldn't use anyway because they'd harm Archie. But that's something I'm going to use next year. But so I just keep the slugs off of these and keep them watered throughout the winter. You can do that through the mesh, and just give them a little weed, keep the weeds away, and they should grow lovely and strong. So there we are. That's how spring cabbage. Thanks very much for coming along. You're going to get in on the act, are you, Archie? Do you want to come and see the cabbages? You can't go down on the floor here because there's things that could harm you. But there he is. He's coming along lovely, isn't he, Archie? You've got a kiss for me. Oh, yeah, I love you too, Archie. We'll say goodbye to everyone. Thanks very much for coming, everybody. Don't forget, subscribe. What's up?